Let's look at some equations with fractions. So the easy way to do this is through an example. So here we have an example of an equation that has fractions in it. This is question 1 here, as you can see. So first of all, it's important that you recognize it's an equation, and we know it's an equation because of the presence of the equals to sign. That's why it's an equation. So when you see an equals to sign, we know, okay, this is an equation, and we can see that we have our fractions. The method for solving equations with fractions is we multiply by the LCD, the lowest common denominator. So we're going to take each term and multiply it by the lowest common denominator. So we have 3 terms here, x over 5, x plus 3 over 4, and 3. The lowest common denominator is the smallest number that the denominators will divide into. Remember, the denominators are the numbers below the line. So 5 is a denominator, 4 is a denominator, and here we don't really have a denominator, but some people like to look at it as 3 over 1. So if you want, you can say 1 is your denominator in this case, but it won't make much of a difference. So our lowest common denominator in this question is going to be 20, because 5 and 4 will divide into 20. 20 is the smallest number that 5 and 4 will divide into. So the method is take each term and multiply it by the lowest common denominator. So I'm going to take each term and write it in a bracket. This term will get multiplied by 20. This term will get multiplied by 20. And this term will get multiplied by 20. So we have 3 terms. Each term got multiplied by 20. Because it's an equation, because of that equals to sign, you can take an equation and multiply it by whatever you like. In this case, it makes sense to multiply the equation by 20 because 20 is the lowest common denominator, and we'll see why in a second. So what do we do next? Well, this x here, this x is being multiplied by 20 and divided by 5 at the same time. So the overall result is basically the 5 will cancel with the 20, leaving you with 4. So the overall result of multiplying by 20 and dividing by 5 is multiplying by 4 as total. Here, 4 divides into 20 5 times. And here, this is like a 3 over 1. So 1 divides into 20 20 times. So you can leave that alone. So what's my next line then? Well, the 5 and the 20 are gone because they've divided into each other, leaving us with just a 4. So we've got 4 times x plus, the 4 has divided into the 20, leaving 5. So 5 times x plus 3 equals 20 times 3. So you can see we multiplied each term by the lowest common denominator, and now we have no more fractions. So by doing this, by multiplying by the denominator, we got rid of our fractions and we've turned it into a much simpler linear equation. So we'll continue solving this. 4 times x, 4x plus 5x plus 5 by 3, 15 equals 20 by 3, 60. So 4x plus 5x, that's 9x, is equal to 60 minus 15, so subtracting the 15. Then we'll get 9x is equals to 45. And then we know that the next step is to divide both sides by 9 to get x on its own. And in doing that, we will get x is equals to 45 divided by 9, 5. So we've got x is equals to 5 is the solution to the equation in this example. Okay, let's have a look at another example. The next one I'm going to do for you is this question 8 right here. So I already have it written out. 4x minus 1 over 3 minus 5x minus 2 over 6 equals 3x plus 2 over 7. So what is our lowest common denominator in this case? So the lowest common denominator, what is the smallest number that 3, 6, and 7 will divide into? Well, the answer to that is 42. So 42 is the smallest number that 3, 6, and 7 will divide into. So we take each term, we have 3 terms, and we multiply it by the denominator, the common denominator in this case of 42. So we've got each of our terms, and each term gets multiplied by 42. And then we do our cancellations. So 3 divides into 42 14 times, 6 divides into 42 7 times, and 7 divides into 42 6 times. So my next line will be 14 times 4x minus 1 minus 7 times 5x minus 2 is equals to 6 times 3x plus 2. So once again, you can see by multiplying each term by the lowest common denominator, we have managed to get rid of our fractions and turn it into a much simpler linear equation. So we will continue. 14 by 4x, so we've got 56x minus 14 by 1 is 14, minus 7 by 5x minus 35x, and minus 7 by minus 2 plus 14 is equals to 18x plus 6 times 2, 12. So it's going to tidy this up a little bit more. My 56x take my 35x, that would be 21x, and my minus 14 plus 14, tidy up to 0, equals 18x plus 12. So subtracting my 18x, I'll get 21x, take 18x is equals to 12. I'm just going to bring that guy onto the next page here. So we have 21x take 18x is 12. 3x is equals to 12. And we know we divide both sides by 3. And we will get x is equals to 4. So the solution to that equation, what we had here, was x is equals to 4. The important thing to understand about this, guys, is we had an equation. Because of the equals to sign, that's why it was an equation. So when you have an equation with fractions, we know that we can multiply by the lowest common denominator, but it must be an equation in order to do that. If you do not see an equals to sign, then it is not an equation and you cannot multiply it. But if you see an equals to sign, it's an equation. We multiply each term by the lowest common denominator to simplify the situation and get rid of fractions. The best thing for you guys to do right now would be to practice some of these questions, check your solutions online, and for access to questions, solutions, graded quizzes and more, visit www.linearmaths.com.